Dan is not present. I don't know if he's coming.
No, he's not.
Okay, he didn't. All right.
So who's up next?
First off the bench would be Peter, who is also remote under the name Denise Collins. So he's
Please.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'll call to order this July 9th, 2024 Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. Start with our meeting minutes from June 25th, 2024. I have a motion on the item. Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, I'd like to move the adoption of the June 25th minutes. They look good to me.
Second, Commissioner Levy seconds.
looks good to me too.
Okay. So we have Commissioner Collins. Are you there? Commissioner Collins,
I'm here.
you were at the last meeting, but you're sitting in for Commissioner Ford.
Okay.
Any comments, questions, edits, etc.? This will vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 That sounded like 3, so that's 7, I think, right?
Yeah, am I missing something here?
Am I missing one?
2, 3,
I heard 6.
4, 5, 6. 3.
Aye. 3.
Aye.
Aye.
I know, I heard the. So who we mi-
Jeff out there?
Who we
So
missing?
1, 2, 3.
Oh,
Jeff.
Commissioner
Oh, Jeff.
Porcello's not here.
Right.
We need.
Oh, I'm sorry. We
alternative.
need Janine as well.
There's only 6. Okay.
I'm sorry. That's my.
So, Before, everybody's voted, but any comments or questions on your end? Commissioner Bukowski, okay. And favor, disfavor?
In favor.
Okay, easy enough. Passes unanimously.
Sorry about that.
No, I,
Kind of like had some like, wait.
no worries, it was just didn't seem right. Right to old business. 338 Commerce Drive, including 316, 328 Commerce Drive and 47 Alley Court, special exception and coastal site plan of CDR-328 LLC pertaining to the construction of a new automobile dealership in the Design Industrial District and the Commerce Drive District. Went.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the applicant Bailey's Auto Group seeks to construct a new Genesis dealership to go with its companion Hyundai dealership that was built in 2020 on a portion of the subject property. This proposal includes demolition of existing buildings at 316 and 328 Commerce Drive and 47 Haley Court. It is the intention to consolidate those 3 parcels with the existing Hyundai site at 338 Commerce Drive. If approved, a lot consolidation map should be recorded on land records as a condition of approval. The proposed new building is 11,250 square feet in size, includes a showroom space and a 3-bay service area. There were variances for maximum setback and parking setback, which were granted by the ZBA in March. The applicant seeks commission discretion to permit a pole light installation at 18 feet pursuant to section 13.13P. The commission may allow a height of greater than 12 feet if no off-site light impacts are anticipated. As articulated in the application, no sidewalk is proposed along Commerce Drive frontage, consistent with the findings made in the 2019 Hyundai application and consistent with our engineering department recommendations. There was a question raised regarding the potential for a crosswalk installation for pedestrian crossing from Haley Court. We did forward you a review by our town engineer. It does not recommend a crosswalk at this location for several reasons. There's a driveway that's directly opposite the sidewalk on Haley Court. It's not a preferred location due to road geometry, and the number of pedestrians at this location does not warrant a separate crosswalk, in his opinion. And there is a protected crosswalk at Brentwood Road traffic light about 220 feet away, which is the preferred location for pedestrian crossings. With respect to the coastal site plan, we agree with the findings in the applicant's report. The site is not in a flood zone and there are no sensitive coastal resources on or adjacent to the site. The total site is almost completely impervious. There will be a modest reduction in pervious cover. I'm sorry. The site is almost completely, yes, I'm sorry. That's There will be a modest reduction in impervious cover, 7.9%, and an improvement to the water quality through proposed drainage system, which includes particle separators, uncurbed tree wells, and expanded rain garden to allow for some infiltration. Relevant standards for consideration for a special exception are: number one is the location, type, character, size, and use of the buildings in harmony with and conform to the appropriate and orderly development of the town and neighborhood, not hinder or discourage the use of adjacent property, excuse me, or impair its value. Two is the location, nature and location of the use of buildings such that there is adequate access for fire protection. Three, are the streets serving the proposed use adequate to carry prospective traffic, with provisions made for entering and leaving the property without creating undue hazard or congestion. And four is the proposed use in compliance with the plan of conservation and development. That is all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Went. May I have a motion, Commissioner Braun?
Motion to approve.
Quick question while we're doing this. Do we need to do anything with the lights? Remember we have,
Yeah, that's as part of their application is to render judgment on whether you thought that their 18-foot proposal with their light spread is okay in lieu of the 12-foot maximum, which is in your discretion.
just because I want to, if we can get that out there, Commissioner Braun. And the other one, between the lights, there was a condition consolidation. Yep, I had that. Map consolidating all the parcels into one lot was a condition of approval that the applicant had said he would agree to. So between the light and that, can you just, would ask if you can include those in some respect to your motion?
Oh, okay. So motion to approve, provided no off-site light impacts are anticipated by increasing the height of the light from the 12 feet allowed to the 18-foot proposed in the plans. And that
They file a lot consolidation.
the lot will be consolidated.
Exactly.
I don't, do we, yeah.
That's fine. So motion to approve with 18-foot lighting and consolidating the parcels. Okay.
Well, yeah. Do we have a second yet, or are we?
No, but I want
Oh,
that.
I agree, yeah. Okay.
Because those were two outstanding items that I wanted addressed. Commissioner Levy? Seconds, thank you.
So,
Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
so just for the discussion, I don't, did we get something about the lights that it won't have an impact? I think they said that.
They had their application materials included a light spread drawing that shows that there's not off-site light spread.
And it follows dark skies.
Yeah, they're dark sky cutoff fixtures and they're consistent with the height of the existing lights on the adjacent property.
Okay, so, yeah, so I like this project. I think it'll be an improvement, especially regarding adding, I guess, approximately maybe half the site now has no stormwater because of the older buildings that will be demolished. And then a modern new building will be put there with stormwater detention and water quality structures. Also, even though it does require coastal site review, I think it said it was 1,400 feet from Ash Creek, which is the nearest water body. I was also pleased that it increases it reduces the impervious surface. I knew what you meant.
Yes, we both had the same struggle.
It decreases the impervious by 7.9%, not a lot, but it's in the right direction, which is always good. It expands the rain garden that already exists on the Hyundai portion a little bit. And yeah, so environmentally, I think it's an improvement. As far as the crosswalks, yeah, I understand engineering determined it would not be safe to add them where we were suggesting they be added. Also, engineering indicated that they meet sight line, although if you put crosswalks there, the visual could be a little bit impacted by structures that are there, but it doesn't affect traffic. So that was interesting to know about. And there is a way of crossing. It is about 200 feet down the road where Brentwood, yeah. Is Brentwood the one that goes by Cumberland Farms? I don't know, but at any rate, it's not too far away, 200 feet, if you're a pedestrian already. So I believe it will fit in with the neighboring properties. It's completely commercialized area, already completely paved over, so it will not reduce property values. It will certainly improve the way things look because of the modern structure instead of several older structures. Adequate fire protection, that was not an issue. The streets are adequate to support this project. It will not cause any kind of undue congestion. There's adequate off-street parking, and it certainly goes along with our existing 2016 POCD, as well as the informal conversations we've been having about the new POCD, and it certainly adds to our commercial tax base, as well as, I think somewhere in the materials, it said it would add 10 jobs to the community. So based on all of that, I would recommend approving it.
Commissioner Levy?
Yep, a little more to add. It meets all the conditions for the 4 conditions. Our dealership there on Dealership Road is certainly in harmony. I concur that the sidewalk leading to nowhere is not needed there, plus it would impact on the 5-foot buffer and be on private property. So for all those reasons, I think it's vast improvement over what's there and should be approved.
Thank you. Other comments, input from the commission? Commissioner Randolph?
I have my hand up too.
Oh, I didn't see it. All right, Randolph, then Harrison. Commissioner Randolph, go ahead. You're on mute.
Go. Alexis was first. Go ahead, Alexis.
Oh,
Go ahead, Commissioner Harrison.
oh, okay. Thank you. I'll be super quick. Thank you, Commissioner Randolph. Yeah, I agree in recommending this to be approved. I think it's a really great project. You know, as my fellow commissioner said, it does meet our special exception criteria. Agree with Commissioner Braun that this is a big improvement environmentally relative to the stormwater detention being improved. Because right now, there is no current stormwater detention at today's standards. So really happy to see that. And I think somewhere in the application did mention the addition, I think, to between 10 and 12 jobs to Fairfield. So that's great to see as well. So yeah, excited to approve this and appreciate this great application.
Thank you, Commissioner Randolph.
I think it's a well thought out project in the right place. The environmental impact will be positive. I do strongly disagree with the engineer's conclusion regarding the crosswalk. And I spoke to Mr. Wendt earlier today about this, and I would respectfully request that, not as a condition of approval, but as a request that the applicant hire a qualified pedestrian engineer to look at the crosswalk there. I do not agree with the conclusions that were presented by the town staff.
Anything particular, just so I can.
I gave a written response to Mr. Wendt. Should I go through that?
Because I don't have it, so.
I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
Oh, sure. So give me a second to pull it up here.
I
So,
don't think that he should be putting that on the record, and
okay. Yeah, give me a second to pull this up then. So.
he's gonna say it now. We're gonna vote.
Also, is this gonna be an amendment to the motion?
Well, right now he's advocating or discussing it. Let's listen to what he has to say and go from there.
Yeah, so quickly, the engineer's comments were that the proposed placement of a crosswalk would run straight across the Commerce Drive. That was never recommended, so I'm not sure where that comment came from. And it says, sorry, I'm gonna take my glasses off here. It says an offset crosswalk location shifted westerly was also analyzed. Although stopping sight lines above the minimum required 300 and 400 feet, there are visual spots for the pedestrian that are blocked by utility poles, equipment, and signs. My response to that is most of Fairfield utility infrastructure is above ground. This suggestion seems to be that we need to bury all of our utility infrastructure before adding sidewalks or crosswalks, which is not feasible. The criteria requiring that there be no sight lines blocked by utility poles, equipment, and signs would prevent us from adding a crosswalk anywhere in town until the utilities are buried. So that second comment seems to be, I think, not well thought out. This third comment were some concerns are that the hump near the post office curve by Pepe's that could impact drivers seeing pedestrians and vice versa. There does not appear to be a grade change on the Commerce Drive that forms a hump. I looked at the topo that there is no hump there. That could be looked at two-dimensionally, not three-dimensionally. I wasn't clear on what the hump was. Number 4, there's a traffic signal and crosswalk 230 feet away, which appears to be a much safer crosswalk. It is, if people are crossing to go over to the Little Goose or the post office, they're not going to walk an extra 500 feet. So the suggestion that it would be safer for people to walk 500 feet rather than cross the street is impractical and not well thought out. And then it says, this 5th comment is, although not defined by CTDOT, some engineering references recommend a minimum of 20 pedestrians per hour for installing a crosswalk unless near a school. There'll be staff and customers from the dealership crossing the street at a dangerous location. The property owner is required to add sidewalks as part of the project, but has asked for a waiver, requesting that a mid-block crosswalk be added in lieu of sidewalks. It's a suggestion, not a requirement. Number 6, diagonal crosswalks from Haley is not recommended due to increased length. A longer crosswalk will be safer than no crosswalk. Pedestrians will cross Commerce Drive without a crosswalk. I request the applicant hire a qualified pedestrian engineer to evaluate this rather than burdening the town with this responsibility. Number 7, from a meeting with top state DOT officials who are unnamed, crosswalks should be placed where you want pedestrians to cross in a location that is considered safe. TPZ is creating an unsafe condition by adding the dealership in the absence of sidewalks on the north side of Commerce Drive. People will cross the street in an unsafe location without a sidewalk. There are established design standards to create a safe mid-block, mid-block crosswalk. So I was a little disappointed in these responses, and I do think it's burdensome to the town to expect the township and the town engineer to come up with a solution. And I think the applicant has been responsive and cooperative. Respectfully request that the applicant, not as a condition, but as a recommendation, attempt to arrive at a solution. And I've got these in writing.
Yeah, but in an executive session like this, we shouldn't be memos that aren't, I mean, everything should be out in the pub, should be discussed like this, so.
Sure. Would you like me to send this in writing?
I would like it.
Sure, I mean, if it's essentially what you said, then I don't think it's necessary, but.
Okay. Yeah, I just read what I wrote.
Okay, so that's fine.
So-
I just question, you're asking though for a recommendation of, for approval, not a condition of approval.
Correct.
Okay, you understand? Okay. Does that
I
make-
don't want to impede the progress of this important project, but I think the applicant has been thoughtful and reasonable, and I would request that they
Okay, but I mean,
further
just
investigate this.
as a recommendation, it's, you know, it's not obviously a condition that they need to do. It's a recommendation that they can pursue or not pursue it in their discretion.
Understood.
Okay, so the
I don't wanna
request.
I'm doing that intentionally to not.
No,
be
no, that's
burdensome.
fine. I just want to put that out there. Commissioner Braun, a request was,
I agree with Commissioner Randolph's points. I hadn't thought of all those 7 points. I think he has good points, and a recommendation is not the same as a condition. It doesn't have to be done, but I think it's a good idea. I have a question.
and just be clear, it's a recommendation for them to explore the, to explore the,
Safety or.
save the the prospect of having a crosswalk in the area. It's just, to correct Commissioner Randolph, it's to retain a engineer or the like to explore the prospect of having a crosswalk there.
That's my request, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a question for clarification and then a question for Mr. Wendt. So for clarification, the crosswalk that was evaluated, was that across Hallie Court Road, or was that across Commerce to the post office? Which one was evaluated?
I'll explain what, and just a couple of, and I did have a conversation with Commissioner Randolph earlier today, but just to clarify some of Mr. Hurley's remarks. Firstly, that the typical location of a crosswalk would be at an intersection. So there's an intersection at Haley Court, and there's a sidewalk on Haley Court. And if we were to continue a crosswalk straight across, would not be feasible because there's a commercial driveway at that location. So the only option would be to consider moving the if there was to be a crosswalk, it would have to be moved to the west, so it wouldn't conflict with that driveway, which makes it a mid-block crosswalk because it's not at an intersection.
By west, you mean up Haley towards I-95?
No, it would be on, we're talking about a crosswalk to get people to the south side of Commerce
Oh.
Drive.
It would be at Haley, near Haley.
At Haley is not practical because there's a driveway there that interferes. So it would have to be moved westerly, so it would no longer be at an intersection. It would be what's referred to as a mid-block crosswalk. So the standards that Mr. Hurley was referring to is the number of pedestrians that would need to be, the bottom line is, it was his view that there's not enough pedestrian traffic to warrant a mid-block crossing, because typically a crosswalk is going to be at an intersection. It can be done. I agree with Mr. Randolph. There are many examples of mid-block crosswalks, but it was the town engineer's opinion that it wasn't warranted here because of the pedestrian volume. And there are some other geometries. Can it be done? Of course, it could be engineered, but is it the right place to put a sidewalk? But the condition says what it says. If that's imposed, I don't think, I'm not arguing that it shouldn't be imposed. Just one other piece that whatever evaluation is done, if there's going to be a crosswalk, it would also need the permission, or I'm sorry, the approval of the police commission. It can't unilaterally just be established. If the engineering report comes back, hey, it's feasible to put a crosswalk at this location, they would still need to then follow up and make an application to the police commission, and it would be their authority to say yay or nay.
Yeah, but we're talking about a recommendation, so we don't have to really, that's kind of in there.
I just had, yeah, so the thing about the 20 pedestrians per hour, that's the recommendation for minimum for installing a crosswalk. Is that every hour or 1 hour a day, or where does it? It's, it's not, it says, although not defined, this is what.
Would you like me to address that?
Sure, yeah.
Is it appropriate for me to address that?
Go ahead, Commissioner Randolph.
That's right. Yeah, so I guess as it was explained to me simplistically, and I told Mr. Went this before, just because no one's swimming across the river doesn't mean you don't need a bridge. So there is no minimum. There are no minimums for the number of people. There is potentially an unsafe condition there, and we are trying to make, I think it would be a plus for the dealership to have, because if you go to the Little Goose for lunch, you see a lot of people from the dealership over there. It would just be a safer place to cross, and would be, in my belief, without doing the detailed engineering, it would be a safe thing to do. There is no minimum for the number of people crossing a street.
And
there's not, it's what you're talking about, what they're talking about is called a traffic warrant. And there is, if there are more than 20, then you should put a crosswalk in, but there is no minimum.
And it's just a recommendation. It says, although not defined by CTDOT, some engineering references recommend a minimum of 20 pedestrians per hour.
If there are more than 20 people crossing the street, then you should put a crosswalk in. But
is that every hour or just rush hour? It doesn't really matter. If you have 20 in any 1 hour, you need.
I think it's probably per hour.
That'd be a lot of people.
But there's common sense, and then there's minimum thresholds, and traffic engineering is both. So there is no minimum threshold.
Commissioner Braun, though, the request is made about adding a recommendation for approval. Is that something?
I'll amend my motion to add a recommendation for.
The recommendation would be that the applicant retain an engineer to further study the prospect of creating a crosswalk.
Good.
Commissioner Levy, is second, do you approve?
Yeah, I mean, as far as a recommendation, I'm fine with that. Personally, I think a crosswalk there would be a false sense of security, and I certainly wouldn't rely on it to keep me safe on Commerce as people approach Chambers, but I'll leave that to the engineers.
Yeah. Hold on, can I go to Commissioner Pekowski? Or?
I just wanted to add further evidence for the recommendation. I do support the recommendation as well, especially because if you were to cross the road, which I do agree, like if you went to lunch or you wanted to run to the post office, it would be very dangerous to do so. But to reach that crosswalk, there is not a crosswalk on Halley. And if you crossed Halley, when you get to the other side, there's no longer a sidewalk. Right, so to reach that other crosswalk.
You go so you can hear.
What's that?
Someone spoke, I don't know.
It's a member of the public.
So
Just speak up a little bit.
You-
Commissioner
go.
Reynolds.
Okay.
I think you're fine.
So I said that I support the recommendation for further inquiry for a crosswalk or safety measures to be put in place, because in looking more closely at how to access the crosswalk, you need to cross over Halley, which does not have a crosswalk. And when you cross over Halley, there's no longer a sidewalk. So I think it would be, and the crosswalk is pretty far down. So, I mean, I think to Commissioner Levy's point, you should probably get in your car and drive across the street. If there are not further, if there's not remediation.
Except that your car is there being repaired.
Right. Are you there to get a new car? So yeah, I definitely support the recommendation.
Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, I do want to thank Commissioner Randolph for bringing this up and his thoughtful, discussion about this, and certainly educated me. I wish I had seen his memo earlier. It would have been helpful to digest it before the meeting, of course. But I agree that we should always be looking at ways to improve our safety for pedestrians, especially as that area of town gets more built out, and make it a more walkable community. So I would agree with that recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further? Good project, meets all our criteria. It's certainly an improvement. I think the recommendation for the crosswalk is fine, as it is a recommendation, and an applicant that I think is going to be a good neighbor and will do what is neat, what they feel is right with the recommendation, considering the preliminary review of our town engineer. I thought the town engineer's report was, I was relying upon it. I thought I would not have done a condition based on his review for a variety, all the reasons outlined there. But that's fine, recommendation will work. So can we put this to a vote? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hands.
Aye, Peter.
And 6, 7, so passes unanimously. Thank you. Take care. Moving on to zoning compliances, 320 Kings Highway, application of Andrew Freeman, architect, to establish an urgent care medical office in an existing building, City MD Urgent Care Design Commerce District. So what?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, where am I? The existing building on this subject site is approximately 4,000 square feet and has for many years been mainly occupied by a dental office and a small nail salon. The applicant proposes to establish a medical urgent care facility in the entire building. A new storefront is proposed, eliminating the present entry vestibule, and a new sign ban is proposed. A new white exterior finish system is proposed. 2 wall signs are proposed of individual channel letter style. The overall layout must be adjusted slightly so it does not exceed our permitted 72 square feet, but would otherwise be compliant. The existing parking lot will be resurfaced. There are existing fairly new concrete sidewalks, aprons, and curbs that are in good condition. I would recommend, however, that there are 2 trees shown on the site plan that should be replaced because they're in poor condition. It would meet the shade tree requirement. They're shown on the plan, but they're not in great shape. So I would recommend replacing those 2 existing trees. Other than that, I believe the application is in compliance with regulations.
Thank you. May I have a motion on the item? Commissioner Levy,
Move to approve with the condition that they replace the two shades.
thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Commissioner Bukowski beat you. You can do the next one. Commissioner Levy,
Yeah. Looking at the plans, it'll be a nice improvement. That dental office has been vacant for a number of years. And it'll, as you come down Kings Highway there, it'll be a vast improvement, both in terms of sight lines and provide a benefit to the town, having another medical facility.
Bukowski,
Not much more to add. I think this will be a great improvement to a street that I drive down every day, and I am in agreement with the trees. If we could replace the trees, that would be wonderful.
thank you. Any other comments, input from the commission and Commissioner Braun?
Is there any
Commissioner Randolph?
possibility of improving the landscaping a little bit? It's kind of ratty looking in the front. Are we allowed to ask them to improve on the landscaping?
We're suggesting they replace those two.
Where are the tree? I couldn't figure out where the trees are. They're in the parking lot, right?
Between Kings Highway and the parking lot.
Those look like shrubs to me.
Well, there's one tree that's in lousy shape.
Okay, that didn't, it's a little tiny tree, right? Not really a shade tree. Okay,
Commissioner Randolph,
Commissioner Braun and I didn't discuss this beforehand, but a similar question. Is there a requirement to submit a landscape plan for these types of projects? I didn't see one in the set.
The site plan in the set reflects the existing condition with respect to landscaping, showing that the parking lots to be resurfaced. But again, in my opinion, there's a landscape, kind of an island between the street and the parking lot that in my opinion, those two trees don't qualify for shade trees under our requirement. And if they were to be replaced, that would satisfy that requirement.
Understood. My question's different. I saw the site plan and it looked like a professionally prepared set. But do we have a specific requirement for a landscape plan for a renovation, or is that just for new construction? Or at all?
It's typically for new construction or additions, but the regulations say that all the areas not being utilized for parking or access be suitably landscaped. So I think in addition to replacing the trees, if you want them to redo the entirety of that, I think it's mostly grass. It's not been well maintained since the building's essentially been vacant for a couple of years. So I believe it would be their intention to spruce that up, but we can certainly have them submit in addition to the conditions, say a revised landscaping plan, including the replacement of those trees.
That would be helpful. And I think that this is a good project. It's, the building is seen better days. And I'm supportive of the use. It's consistent with, a medical use before. I'm glad to see that project go forward, but I think there seems to be a consensus that the landscaping is important to the site, and if we could make that submission of a landscape plan a condition of approval, or a recommendation, whichever the commission sees fit, that would be helpful.
Levy,
If we amend to include that, would that go to the tree warden, or wouldn't need to come back to us?
No, it would be, we would review it. It's that they're not street trees. It would be on their site. To the extent that we would want input from the tree warden, we can certainly do that administratively.
Yeah. Okay. So could I amend it to the condition be to replace the two trees and submit a landscaping plan administratively to be reviewed by the staff and or tree warden as appropriate to improve the general landscaping.
got it?
Yeah, more or less. I was going
Commissioner
to
Bukowski?
more or less say revised landscaping plan to include, but not limited to, at least 2 new shade trees with, them.
Even better.
Yes, okay.
I'll
Commissioner
support the
Bukowski?
amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Just one additional point of clarification. Was this reviewed to make sure that the tree plantings complied with the minimum ratio of trees per parking spaces? Is that indicated on the plan? I didn't look at it that closely, sorry.
Yeah, two spaces I'm sorry, 2 trees would make it compliant.
Is it, what are we, 1 to 20?
One per 10.
10, okay, thanks.
Just a quick question. So the trees that I'm looking at on this aerial they're really not in the parking lot. There's no room in that parking lot to put trees in the parking lot. They're more like in the little wedge of green space between Kings Highway and the entrance to Stop and Shop or something, or
Yeah, they're between the sidewalk and the internal parking lot.
Oh, they're down there. Okay, there's 2 little green areas on this property, but, and then when they do landscaping plans, are they recommended to use, native species and, try to eliminate lawn, have your ground cover or shrubs or something like that? Do they use modern, climate resilient techniques or?
There's not a heck of a lot of space on this site for landscaping, so I
think it's worth pointing out, whenever we do landscaping, we should be moving in a good direction.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment really quickly? I do support the amendment, but is this something that we will moving forward request of applicants? I feel like it feels like I'm looking at this here and there are a bunch of shrubs and clearly there are 2 trees that are not doing well that I assume those are the trees they're replacing. But just, I don't know, just want to make sure we're also being fair that we're requiring quite a few extra steps.
Well, I think the extra step is going to be the replacement of the trees, which is needed to comply. And the extra language is, just to acknowledge the fact that the building's been vacant for so long that we expect that they will, now that it's going to be not vacant, to start to do the landscaping properly, but then they can show that to us when they show us the replacement of the trees. I don't, listen, if it was just like if it was maintained, but not like at a
right, I feel like
at level, I don't think we would be doing this, but I think there's enough of a hook for us to be doing this.
If I can help as well, they're completely replacing the parking lot. So this is a major renovation of this site rather than just a change in tenant with a change in use from one use to another that's not triggering a whole lot of site work. So since they are doing that and doing a complete new facade and a complete new resurfacing of the parking lot, I don't think it's inappropriate to treat this as if it's almost new construction with respect to landscaping.
Okay, that makes me feel much better. Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Further comments, or can we put this to a vote? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hands.
Aye, Peter.
Aye.
I see 6 hands then, so it passes unanimously. Next item is
Sir, did you say, Chairman, did you say 6? Sorry.
6 hands plus Commissioner Collins is.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you.
34 Sherman Court, application of Ryan Pereiro, I apologize, to establish a hair salon in a portion of an existing building, Center Design District.
Okay. Subject site is in the Center Design District, formerly occupied for office. The applicant proposes to convert the first floor to a hair salon. Building shares a common driveway with access to number 24 Sherman Court. There are 5 parking spaces for number 34, 6 spaces for number 24, which incidentally also has a hair salon. There's no increase in parking required for this proposed use, and in my opinion, otherwise complies. That's all I have.
Thank you. May I have a motion on the item? Commissioner Braun? Move to approve?
Yeah, move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Collins, Commissioner Braun?
I first have a question. No increase in parking required for the proposed use, so they didn't need a variance or anything.
Correct.
They're changing it from office to salon, but I was confused about the plan. Are they moving the salon from somewhere else to here? Or-
This particular applicant has had salons in other locations.
Okay, so they're moving here and whatever's in the office now is going away. So there's no concern about parking, I guess. There's adequate parking. Yeah, so it's great to have commercial activity in the center of business district. It's not changing anything about the structure of the building. It's just the change of use from office to service. So it's appropriate, and I recommend approving it.
Commissioner Collins?
Yeah, there really isn't a big change in anything other than a tenant. And it looks like the new tenant has a background in some multiple other spots. So I agree to go through with it.
Thank you. Other comments, input from the commission? Applies with our regulations, so it's pretty straightforward. We put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye, Peter.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Moving on to public hearings, our first item, 719-723 South Pine Creek Road, request of Montauk Builders LLC for 100% release of a $17,650 bond pertaining to a subdivision improvements in the zone. Well, do we have?
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Bob Rosati is on Zoom.
Attorney Rosati,
You unmute, Bob.
you're on mute. I'm surprised to see you here, Bob. Still on mute.
Can everybody hear me?
Hear you now. How are you?
Good. How are you, Chairman Noonan? Good to see you.
See you as well.
Good to see everybody, Mr. Went. Yes, I am here, visiting from Stratford. I'm attorney Robert Rosati. My office is in Stratford, Connecticut. I'm here representing Montauk Builders LLC with this request for 100% release of the performance bond for this subdivision. I think you have engineering reports that confirm that all the work has been completed, all the COs have been issued, and all the units have been sold. So I hope it's a straightforward request to get 100% back.
Thank you. We have those, Mr. Went.
We do have a report from the engineering department recommending 100% release.
Okay.
Do we have-
Questions for Mr. Attorney Rosati?
Do we have a copy of that? I don't know if I might not have downloaded it if it's.
I intended to attach it to my staff
Okay.
comments, but I did not. I have a copy. It passes along. I didn't make multiple copies, but
Just if you
I
can,
apologize.
put that on the,
I'll email it to.
we'll email it and then put it in the public record.
So this has to do with so our engineering department said the sidewalks have been corrected to acceptable standards, the curb has been installed. Trees should be waived. What does that mean? Street trees?
In this case, there's utility lines right above where street tree would be planted. The applicant planted trees just inboard of the sidewalk on their private property at the behest of the tree warden.
Oh, but there are trees.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Here, pass it out.
So the bonded improvements essentially were the drainage that was required, concrete driveway apron, new concrete curb, new concrete sidewalk in the street trees and site stabilization.
Are not waived, they were simply relocated.
Yes, yes, they were, we typically street trees are within the town right of way, but in this case, they put them on the private property because of the location of the utility lines.
Further questions or any other questions for the applicant? Attorney Rosati, anything further?
That's it, Chairman Noonan.
I will close the initial presentation portion of this application. I'll ask open up to public comment. Is there anybody joining us in person that wishes to be heard on this application?
Not for this, but
Oh, I was gonna say, I was a little surprised if it was.
No, hang on, Mega, come to, that's seven.
Over here, sorry.
Sorry.
Nobody's in person. Is there anybody joining us remotely or by phone that wishes to be heard on this application? 727 South Pine Creek Road. Joining, I don't think anybody joining by phone, but press *6, I believe, to unmute yourself. You're by phone. Any member of the public wish to be heard in this application? Yeah. Hearing none, I'll close the public comment portion of the application. Attorney Rosati, anything further or all set?
I'm all set. Thank you. Good to see you.
See you too. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you, Jim.
Close this application, the hearing on this application. Excuse me.
I know.
Left already. Yeah, I know. Something to do next time, I guess. Old Dam Road, Pine Creek, special permit and coastal site plan application of the town of Fairfield pertaining to the replacement and the relocation of existing tie gates in the floodplain district.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Wendt, for the record. I'm going to start and then I'll introduce. Joining me is Mega Jain, Senior Civil Engineer in the Engineering Department. I'll give a brief overview of this proposal and then turn it over to Mega, who's got some slides to walk you through. So as you likely know, if you read the materials, the town maintains an existing tide gate system on Pine Creek in the Old Dam Road open space. Yeah, they were installed in 1982 and they are in need of replacement. This is an application of the Conservation Department. They first started by making an application to DEEP for a structures and dredging permit that has been approved. They need a coastal site plan application because of its location and because there are approximately 400 cubic yards of net fill involved, that triggers a special permit for excavation and fill. So in what you have in hard copy, the link, the agenda link is rather lengthy. It's 245 pages of materials. So to help you to try to kind of condense this, what I provided for you in the hard copy is a referral response from the Land and Water Resources Division of DEEP on the coastal site plan application portion. And behind that is Emmeline's staff report with respect to the coastal site plan. You have that in hard copy, but it was also on the link. So as I said before, there's been a DEP approval for the tidal wetlands and structures and dredging permit. And the response that we got back from DEEP Office of Long Island Sound Programs was positive. They found it consistent with coastal management policies with 2 recommended conditions. There were some species identified from a review of the National Diversity Database. It requires some attention with respect to timing of certain work that's done. And then also a condition that we're also recommending that proper sedimentation controls that are shown on the plan be maintained. This is a project that's going to be coordinated with the Conservation Department. They are the ultimate stewards of the tide gates once they're installed. Having that background, Yiga can walk you through the construction sequence with some of the slides that we have.
So our first slide, as you can see, is just it's about the location of the project, which is near the Kionis Field, Old Dam Road, and we have a historical bridge, which is a trusses. That's a historical bridge. There is the Long Island Sound as a crossing of joins the Pine Creek and crosses under this historical bridge. So what we are doing at this point is there are 3 existing outfalls at present, and we are relocating those 3 outfalls under the historic bridge. From 3, we are increasing to the 5 outfalls. 3 will be self-regulatory tide gates, and 2 will be just the floodgates to improve the hydraulic capacity. So we are realigning it. We are relocating those 3 tide outfalls to under the bridge, under the historic bridge. So this is what we are doing with this project. The reasons for doing this is it will maintain the strength of the indigenous species because there were some historical wildfires that were addressed back in 1982. Historically, there were wildfires. It will improve the hydraulic capacity. It will control invasive species, and it will realign the channel. It will improve the hydraulic capacity by doing all these, by realigning this outfalls. So the sequence, I can run through a little bit of sequence. If we can go on to our next slide. If you're interested in the pictures, we have few pictures over here. You can see those 3 existing outfalls.
Scroll down just a little bit, Matt. See that?
So this is an existing 3 outfalls tied. These are self-regulatory tide gates. You can see those balls over there. So 3. So we are going to fill them up with the concrete fills. And these 3 will be filled up, and we will be realigning. We are relocating those 3 under that historical bridge.
Oh, no, the other way.
Yeah, just keep going. So let's.
Yeah, there. I'll tell. So I'm sorry I'm sorry, go back one, Matt.
Yeah,
Actually, I
Are
apologize.
these diagrams in the 245-page
Oh,
document?
yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
they are.
They are.
So that's how this is the existing maps. This is a proposed map. So this is how it looks right now. We will be filling this existing the existing pipes. So the sequence will be first of all, we will be removing the historical trusses that exist right now. We will remove them. We will install temporary cofferdam. We will regrade the dike. The existing dike will be regraded.
Sorry, could you just speak up? Did you say a dike?
Yes, there is a
That's
dike.
not a tide gate, that's something else.
No,
That's
that's a
already
dike.
there?
That's there. We will be regrading the dike as shown on the map, as shown on the plan. We will, to support the head walls and the proposed outfalls, we will be using the piles. Helical piles will be driven after regrading the dike. And then we will use the backfill and concrete filling for the existing pipe. So this is the sequence of the construction that looks right now. Do you have any questions right now regarding the sequence or regarding the purpose or anything?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Harrison, then Braun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. I had a question. Did you consult former Conservation Director Tom Stanky, who invented, I believe, has a patent for these tide gates?
I have not contacted him.
Is there a plan? Because he knows these things inside and out, and I would love his professional feedback.
Well, if you look at the application materials, there's a history, Mr. Stanky's dissertation of the history of why the ultimate installation of the tide gates is in the application materials, and it was in the background materials sent to DEEP. So
Okay.
as well, so that's all documented. Whether he was consulted personally, I don't believe so, but this is a Conservation Commission application.
He just has so much knowledge on this topic because he invented this, and he still lives in our town and he knows a lot. So my recommendation would be maybe to give him a call.
Well, he still lives here, and we sent him the link to all the materials last week, so he's aware of the application.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Braun.
Yeah, I know the tide gates needed maintenance. I've been hearing that if they're not properly maintained, the self-regulating, and this is the extent of my knowledge, self-regulating means they open when they need to because the tide's coming in, and then they close when they need to prevent flooding or something like that without needing manual intervention.
Yes.
And if they're not maintained, that automatic thing won't take place.
Yes.
So then you have to either manually keep them open or closed depending on flood conditions, and that's very bad because it's not going with the ebb and flow of the tide. Is that, so they need to be maintained, and apparently they all needed some work, but it seems like this is a much bigger project than just maintaining them. Like, you're removing 3, you're filling them in.
Yes.
Is that going to create an obstruction or a change? What does it mean to fill them in? And is this photograph on page 110, is that 3 of them next to each other?
If I can answer that. If you look at the drawing that's on the
What page is that?
I don't know what page that is, but if you look at the screen,
yeah.
the
Is that the bridge that we're talking about?
yeah, the three existing pipes
Mhm.
are on the bottom of that drawing. There are three pipes underneath. They will remain in place. And the five pipes that are shown above that would be underneath the existing bridge, installed underneath the existing bridge with new tide gates installed. Once those are installed, the three existing pipes will be abandoned in place and filled.
So are you creating a blockage if you're filling them in?
No, they remain in place until the new tide gates are installed.
Oh.
Once the new tide gates are installed, then the old ones will be abandoned in place.
Okay, and then we're doing three of the five new ones will be the self-regulating ones. Is that the same thing that Mr. Stanky invented, or is that something? Okay.
Yes,
And
three
two
will-
will not be self-regulating. What does that mean? And how is that, why is that? Or what is the reason for that?
To maintain the hydraulic capacity of the channel. So three will be self-regulated, meaning let the water in and out,
Okay.
and the two, like you're controlling that tide with the three, and the two will be for improving the flow, meaning you don't require to control the tide with those two. It's just for the hydraulic capacity. It's improving.
if there's a
hydraulic
flood or something?
capacity
Yes.
For flooding issues.
The standard
Yeah.
standard tide gate that's not self-regulating,
Yeah.
when the tide is going out, will open up to allow the water to come, and when the tide's coming in, shuts to limit the amount of water that enters above it. The self-regulating tide gate that was created allows some water to come in, but not so much that it floods the adjacent properties, but enough to get proper tidal flushing to support the salt marsh, so that what happened historically and why they were installed was invasive Phragmites got in there because there wasn't adequate. Historically, they would just put trenches in to drain the marsh because of mosquito populations, and that led to negative consequences. The marsh degrading, other species coming in that were subject to fires, so that regulating tide gates don't allow the full high tide all the way in, but enough water to support the tidal grass species in the marsh to create a true tidal marsh, but not such a high tide that it floods adjacent residential property.
So the two that are not self-regulating, they would be open all the time and let more water in?
They would allow
Flood control.
water to exit quicker,
Oh,
but not water to come
just go
in.
out, not in.
Correct. The self-regulating piece is what gets adjusted
Yeah.
to set the
The
proper,
reason for that is what, sea level rise, climate change, bad flooding, more rain? I
yeah,
mean,
to allow
Flood control.
in a storm condition, to
Okay.
allow that water to be evacuated faster.
Whereas the regular ones would slow it down too much. You'd have to like open them up manually or something to let the water out or faster, right?
It just helps the
And then-
outflow.
It's just a
Thank you.
dual purpose where
And
you're
then-
regulating and.
Can you just explain a coffer dam? My understanding is it's a way of partially blocking the flow of water of a water body so you can do engineering work in that area, but not the whole area. Does that have an impact on wildlife? It must have some impact on.
It's a good question. That's where that natural database is coming with the coffer dam. With the coffer dam, the contractor will have to maintain a 50-degree Fahrenheit, below 50-degree Fahrenheit temperature. So the hibernation of the turtles, when the hibernate.
Turtles?
Yeah, there's a number. However, they have allowed us to do the work after November, provided we provide the NDDB with the turtle plan.
NDDB, Natural Diversity.
Natural
Database.
Diversity Database, with the turtle plan, with the turtle protection plan. The biologist will have to be on site during construction to monitor the turtles and the owl roost. And for coffer dam, for in-water work, the contractor will have to maintain the temperature above 50-degree Fahrenheit during December, so that turtles, when they're not coming on the ground, when there's a hibernation temperature, they have to.
Is that the only species that were concerned? Were there other species of concern, listed species that were?
Turtles, and one is the
What
owl.
turtle was that? Well, it doesn't matter.
I'm not sure. There's
Oh,
like
well.
a very scientific name.
That's right. It
It
doesn't
must
matter.
be in the application.
What was the other one?
Owls are there.
Owls?
There's a
Yes.
certain species of owls that roost during the
Roots
winter time.
During the,
It seems like an owl might, if they're roosting, it might affect their nest perhaps.
yeah, so we have to submit the plans. We have to hire a biologist who will prepare the plans, the protection plans to carry on the work after that.
And the thing about the dike, I didn't know there was a dike down there. That's being removed or we're moving the river channel somewhere?
The dike now, the pipes that contain the existing tide gates are beneath the dike. They penetrate the dike
Where's
presently.
the dike now?
Dike is what you walk on. If you've walked on that open space, you park in the parking lot and walk up the walking path, you're walking on the dike till you get up to the old landfill. So those pipes that are there now are underneath the dike or penetrate the dike, if you will.
The dike is basically the bridge, more or less.
Correct. The bridge sits on land. It doesn't,
It's not really a bridge.
underneath.
Okay, it's more like walkway.
It's a decorative.
So that dike is being removed?
No. There's regrading in association with the project, but the dike will ultimately remain. If the dike were removed, there would be no tide gates. You know, you need.
Supporting structure.
Right.
And how is the channel of the flow of Pine Creek changing based on this project? Did I hear that?
Yeah, we are realigning that channel. They're just realigning the channel.
If you go to the,
But everything's staying in the same place though, the tide gates and everything.
can you scroll to the aerial
Yeah,
map?
they're just realigning that channel by improving the hydraulic capacity.
Can you
and
zoom in on that
overflow.
image a little bit? Please, this one? Yes.
It's there now. Read it.
Now, a little closer in if you could. How's that? That's fine. The existing channel is where the water is, right? The water's. All right. So you see the dike, there's water on either side of the dike thank you. And the tide gates are underneath it. The bridge, can you move the arrow up a little higher, right where down a little lower, there's that wide section. That's the bridge right there. So that's where the new tide gates are gonna be. So the channel is gonna be relocated slightly, so it will go under the bridge. And then once the existing tide gates are filled, the channel will be slightly above where it is today and flow under the bridge.
Can you just point where it is now, where it will be? Just,
Where it is now, right down a little bit farther.
and that's where the three tide gates are
That's
now.
there.
That's where the three tide gates are. On either side of the dike, you can see the structures there
Okay,
where the water connects. That connects the two waters.
okay.
The bridge is just above that. That's where the new tide gates will be installed. So the channel will be slightly
So you're moving the channel of the water up like, what, 50 feet or so?
about, but
And what does that do environmentally or flood wise? What is the benefit of that? Is there a reason for that?
well, it's because the flow of the creek has to be maintained while the new tide gates are being installed.
I mean, do we want to redirect the creek for some reason? I thought there was a benefit to that.
Well, if there's also in the package, there's old historical aerials that show that before the installation of the dike, that's where the channel actually was.
Commissioner Fikowski.
We've had some questions around the three existing tide gates, and were they assessed and determined that they were no longer functioning at a certain level? And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's a whole historicals that is part of this. That three, it's more like it's more than a function that is being written over here. There was a tidal water flow that was restrictive of. There was not a consistent tidal flow. Invasive species have populated the area and degraded the natural habitats within the marsh. So that's one of the reasons the indigenous species that reside in the area, they were creating a problem. So more than just a hydraulic capacity improvement, there are more other reasons historically to make a decision of relocating these three outfalls. It was more it's more like conservation terms here.
So it's not.
But
so
the
it's not
existing, the
necessarily-
existing tide gates are past their useful life
Right,
and
and
are
aging,
not
yeah.
really
Okay, that was my
repairable.
next
They need to be
question.
just replaced.
They can't, that, right, so it's not something that can be repaired and then added on to.
Right.
It's something, so the life expectancy of these
Yes,
is
they're-
generally 40 or so years.
How old is this?
Well, they were put in
1982?
1982, so,
Yeah,
you know, it's been a while.
okay,
In a while, so more than 40 years we are talking.
okay, all right, so that makes sense.
Yes, it's mostly of the aging concerns and mostly like conservation, tidal invasive species, phragmites and wildfires that is related to all
Got it.
flow that was creating more problems.
Okay, thank you.
Well, let's just see if there's anybody else. Any other member of the commission have a question? Commissioner Braun.
As far as the turtles,
Yeah,
I'm a turtle person.
I love turtles.
And so the only, this is the DEP permit, so we don't really have control over that. But is the only requirement that a biologist be there during certain months when they're known to be hibernating? What if they're hibernating before that and you're going through November and it's cold and they're hibernating already? Is there a biologist that's required to be there?
Yes, April
Earlier
to,
than-
so recommendation is April to November from NDDB, where we don't need a biologist on site if you do the construction during that period. But after November, they prefer biologists on site during the construction period to monitor the turtles within owls,
Thank you.
not the turtles, but the owls within this 200 meter they
Mhm.
have used, 60 feet to, because they come up and to monitor the turtles. So what they have suggested to prepare, the biologist should prepare a plan and submit to NDDB for the protection plan, how to protect those turtles and
Is there a
owls.
requirement that the biologist be notified if they find a nest or something, even if it's not during the time when they have to have the biologist on duty, like as a site monitor or something, or as a,
Site monitor will be on site, but biologist has been recommended after November. Just after November, if we and we will continue this construction after November, otherwise we have to stop it and start again in next April 2025.
are we allowed to put a condition on that the biologist be there longer since we're only here for
Well,
excavation?
I would say that
That's
is,
DEP.
I think, beyond the scope of what this application is, that's required under the DE. I think we can require that the, as mentioned, compliance with the NDDB recommendations, but beyond that, I think would be beyond the scope of what.
And I have a question about the shore area plan. Thank you for sending us the original one, but this might be our workup. This might be for Ms. Harrigan. Do we have a shore area plan of the year 2000? That's not really relevant to this discussion. I mean, that might be a typo in here. In the write-up that we did for this, it says the shore area plan of 2000, but I thought the last one we did was 1986. If we have one of 2000, it'd be great to see.
The 2000 plan simply took the 86 plan. Exactly. There were no-
Didn't-
there was
just
no-
put a new date on it?
There was no change.
Okay, okay.
Please continue. You have any other?
You guys.
Subject to additional
No,
questions.
that's fine. I didn't know if you had more in the presentation. Thank you. That's fine.
Yes.
There's got a question.
Oh, Commissioner Randolph.
Yeah, quick question, just for clarification. Well, first of all, thank you for walking us through this very detailed and well-presented plan. My question, being a newer member of this commission, is what is it that we're voting on here? And how is this under our remit?
I can answer that. It's a coastal site plan because it's work within the coastal boundary and because there is a total of approximately 400 yards of net fill. It's an excavation and fill permit. So through our referral to DEP and our staff review, we believe it's in compliance with the relevant coastal resource policies, provided that they follow the natural database recommendations thank you. I forget that second D all the time. I can't even do DEEP. I'm still DEP. So, and that proper sediment and erosion controls be done. So this is, again, the applicant here to DEEP for the coastal structures and dredging permit was the Conservation Department. The engineering department will be managing the construction under the supervision and consultation with the Conservation Commission. But to answer your question, it's a review of whether this plan is or is not consistent with coastal resource policies and the fill proposed.
And that sounds like a pretty technical determination. I guess the engineer's review is that it is. Is that the conclusion?
It is, and you're not here. I'm sorry to get the hard copy, but embedded within that link.
Yeah, I was looking at the link.
We did refer this to the Long Island Sound programs for their review and assessment of coastal resource management policies. It was their opinion that it's consistent, subject to those conditions. And there's also a 4-page report from Emmeline with our own staff assessment. With the same conclusion.
So we're effectively voting on whether the proper reviews have occurred for this, I'll just say, technical project.
Yes, the judgment on a coastal site plan application is whether you think the project is or is not consistent with the relevant coastal resource policies.
And that recommendation that it is in the report, correct?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
We sit in our administrative capacity for CAMs. We have the special permit that's for the fill.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? So that ends the initial presentation portion of this hearing. Is there any member, I'll open up to public comment. Is there a member of the public who's joining us in person that wishes to be heard in this application? You guys are all next, right?
Yeah.
Any member of the public that's joining us remotely or by phone wish to be heard on this application? Don't see anybody joining by phone, but if you are, please press *6, I believe, to unmute yourself. Nobody, Mr. Decker, excuse me, in the chat or anything like that. We have chat with Zoom? I think we do, right?
Yes.
No hands, no chat. Any member of the public joining us in person or remotely wish to be heard in this application? Hearing nothing, I'll close the public comment portion. Anything further? I will close the hearing on this application. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Next item is 251 Commerce Drive, special exception. Coastal site plan application of Ingress Realty LLC pertaining to additions and alterations to an existing automobile dealership, design industrial district, commercial drive district. Say earlier. Automobile drive, what'd you call it? Yeah, that's what I wrote. Take your time. So Attorney Rosati was here earlier. His father and my grandpa were all ball partners. Oh, yeah? Yes, I've known Rosati's for a while. Brother's a really good golfer, is a Great River pro there. Good evening.
Evening. Without jackets, it's a little warm in here.
It is.
All
warm,
right,
yes.
okay, they're back there. For the record, my name is Megan Miles. I am a land use attorney at Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy. My office is at 195 Church Street in New Haven. Here tonight also with me is my colleague, Vincent Demora. He's actually a Fairfield resident, so he's been very helpful on this project. My firm represents the applicant, who is also the property owner, Jangris Realty LLC. They are affiliated with Jangris Motor Cars, and here tonight from Jangris is Mike Reno, sitting back there, Director of Facilities. Our project engineer is Rock Eamon from SLR. And here for architecture and design is Dan Ray of Jewett Construction. So to outline the presentation, I'm going to briefly overview the property, the existing conditions, and the project, and then briefly summarize. It triggered a list of applications that were required, so I'm going to go through them quickly, and then I will hand it off to Rock to review the civil site plan. Dan will give a brief overview of the design. Please jump in at any time with questions, or if you wanted us to address something that we did not. And then I will finish up with some miscellaneous items like the coastal site plan review component and conclude. So that'll be our presentation. So to start, this is the rendering of the project, but if you could go to the next slide, this is a property aerial. You can zoom in a bit. Candidly, this is from Google. The property is 251 Commerce Drive.
This
It's,
presentation is in our record.
yes, I sent this to Mr. Wendt yesterday.
Most of these slides are in the.
No, that's fine, as long as it's
Yes.
there. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Yes. So the property is zoned designed industrial district and the Commerce Drive area design district. It is indicated there with the red indicator above it. It's obviously a large site. It's a little over 3.5 acres. If you can go to the next image, that's a zoom in on the site. It's currently improved with a 31,000 square foot approximately commercial building. And it has historically been used as an automobile dealership and repair center. So we are here tonight for another dealership on Commerce Drive. So you guys are familiar with these. This is essentially across the street from the one you reviewed earlier today. And the site was approved for a dealership and repair center originally back in, I believe, 1998. It received special exception approval and at that time location approval from the ZBA. So it's been a dealership and repair center for over 25 years. The remainder of the site, as you can tell, is paved. It's a large surface parking lot. It contains 327 spaces. It abuts the train tracks there. It is in the FEMA flood hazard zone AE with a base flood elevation of 15 feet, which Rock will get into further in his presentation. And actually, if you can go up again to the image above that one. So you can tell from surround,
Just go back
keep
down.
going.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
There you go.
So this one shows the surrounding area and you can tell from this photo that there's a concentration of similar uses, a lot of automobile dealerships on the site. And then there's also a number of industrial and retail uses with Pepe's across the street. And two more images, if you can scroll down. I just have a couple shots of the street view of the property. And so you can tell it's a tired building. I guess that's the way to put it. But yes, those are existing conditions. To briefly summarize the applicant, as I mentioned, they're affiliated with Jangris Motor Cars. Jangris was founded in 1930, so they have nearly 100 years experience and during that time and today they're still family owned and operated. They now have 10 franchises and 8 locations, including I think relatively new dealership for Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram here in Fairfield at 430 Tunxus Hill Road. So the project is to relocate that site here to 251 Commerce Drive. And I'll briefly describe the project and then hand it off to Rock for the site plans. But the proposal is to construct a almost 18,000 square foot addition to the building with a new service drive and canopy, with also some internal renovations in order to establish a multi-showroom dealership with companion service and parts center. I think that's the existing condition survey. You can stay there, it's fine.
There? Okay.
Oh, actually go to the next one. Yeah, here's a color site plan of the proposal. Other notable site updates include building design updates that bring the building design into conformity with the design standards for the Commerce Drive area design district, which includes using a variety of building materials, a variety in building massing, more transparency, that sort of thing. Significant flood resiliency improvements to both the building and the site. And the result is that there's a significant reduction in impervious surface contemplated with this project, and reduction in parking. I believe is going to be reduced from 327 spaces to 175. And then also an increase in landscaping, trees, that sort of thing on the site. So finally, and then I will stop talking, the required approvals for this project. We have some special exceptions. A special exception is required for automobile sales and repairs in the designed industrial district. And then that also under that umbrella are the special permits for new construction. in the Commerce Drive area design district and then outdoor display and storage in those districts. I will revisit that component later. The old approvals for this site actually did not allow outdoor display on the site, but over the last 25 years, that seemed to happen nonetheless. So in this application, we've requested site improvements related to that and then to actually permit that by special permit going forward on the property. There's also a special permit for excavation and fill, and last is coastal site plan review. So with that, I will hand it off to Rock to review the civil set.
Beautiful. Just for the record, Rock Emmond, Associate Civil Engineer with SLR Consulting, formerly Mylon McBroom. Here on behalf of the applicant, we have offices, we're going all over the place these days, but I specifically am from 99 York Drive in Cheshire, Connecticut. If you could do me a favor and scroll up to the survey, it's the sheet just before this. Beautiful. Just to give everybody some more context about the general site. So you can see that the existing building is 30,000, I think it's 30,100 and change or something like that. Don't quote me on the exact number, but the T-shaped existing building is essentially straddling the entire property. So there's a U shape of parking that it is enveloping the property, as well as infrastructure for storm drainage that's kind of localized in the low points of the area. So that's kind of these dashed lines going around. So from a site plan perspective, under existing conditions, so you have the existing building, which is located in the center. And because we're both also trying to mitigate peak flows and everything, as well as the floodplain, this is going to be a key part in our design. But under existing conditions today, this infrastructure is essentially going to be reutilized. Additionally, with this, there are site lights that are currently already installed, and they're kind of already, I guess, embedded into a 2-foot site wall. It's a freestanding seat wall that envelops the entire property line. You can kind of see it. If you could do me a favor and scroll, I think it's just to the, actually, that's almost perfect. If you can zoom into that perfect one right there. That one? Yep. So the front facade along Commerce Drive, there's actually a small seat wall that is along the frontage. This kind of motif envelops the entire site. This particular one is fieldstone facaded, while the horseshoe shape around the property is actually just straight concrete. A portion of the site also has, if you can scroll up to this guy, we're also bounded specifically by trees, which would be the south side, and the left is west, the west side. That's kind of primarily where most of the shade trees occur on the existing site today, as well as within our property boundary, there are some street trees under existing conditions today, as well as some shrubs at the front that kind of envelop the site itself. Now, if we can scroll back to the site. So if we go back one more down.
Thank you, Mr. Decker.
Appreciate all that you do. And apologies for jumping around a little bit. You'll notice, incidentally, if you squint, the inventory parking, which is kind of isolated, well, I wouldn't say isolated, but to the right side, all Dodge Jeep vehicles. I did this on purpose, and everything is like Kias and Hyundais on the left side. I appreciate that a little bit. But under existing conditions, you have the kind of the T shape, and the proposed building addition, which is located on the left side, is 17,875, which includes the service drive canopy in that number. Essentially is kind of closing the block. So in doing the closing the block, there are many different design challenges that we have. So under existing conditions, we have the site or the floodplain. So there's a floodplain that's kind of enveloping most of the Commerce Drive sites, and specifically we're on elevation 15. Under existing conditions, the finished floor of the building is actually at 15.9 for the majority of the portion of the building, with the exception of this small outcrop building, which is at 14.8, I believe. Let me just double check that number. Yep, 14.8. Nice. So as part of your zoning regulations, we have to make sure that we're going to be, one, mitigating for any sort of compensatory storage if we're doing any fill, or doing any mitigations with regard to the flood proofing, which is required for 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So in this instance, our base flood elevation is 15. 1 plus is 16, so we have to essentially flood proof the entire building up to elevation 16. There was I think it's like a window well that's located. There's a new ADA accessible ramp at the front entrance that we're proposing. Directly to the right of that, there's kind of this rectangle. That's this side. Nope. Right there. Oh, you almost got it. Yep, right there. So there's this window well that actually leads, I believe, to a basement facility that's for some utilities that are coming in. Incidentally enough, I have some survey shots that actually show that that's at elevation 16. Crazy. So I'm kind of happy about that. But when it comes to the floodplain, what we're doing is, so because of the building addition, we have to, one, because we're trying to mitigate the compensatory storage through a new floodplain compensation basin, which is also going to be kind of hand in hand with our water quality measures. So as Megan was alluding to, so there was 327 spaces that were previously on the site. We're reducing down to 175. Now, when you get into the nitty gritty of it, 175 spaces, 63 of those spaces are technically quote unquote, what's kind of required for our use. So there's the employees, I think there's a special regulation specifically for auto repair. This is 10 spaces or something like that. So we kind of want to isolate those to the service area. So on the left side, we're kind of giving those spaces. And on the right side, we're providing for the inventory spaces. So those are the spaces that are essentially for, or they're going to be sold. So in doing so, it kind of gives it this sort of nice flow to be kind of back house versus the, I guess, front of house. But when it comes to that, we're also emphasizing, as Megan also alluded to, the vehicle display at the front. So you kind of have this nice entry into the facility this is where you're coming to, do your service, park to come in and browse the inventory, all this on the left side, and then kind of the back house on the right side. I believe there was also a original condition approval that required that all the loading be utilized on site as opposed to within the right of way.
Actually, could I jump in there for a
Yeah.
second? So I had mentioned, again, this is Megan Miles for the record, that there's 2 historic approvals in the record. One is from this commission for special exception approval, and that had a list of conditions, and that required no deliveries on Commerce Drive and all deliveries on site. And then the certificate of location approval indicated no deliveries on site. So I think that the applicant at that time just didn't have a need for on-site deliveries. So they welcomed, sure, if you want that condition, that's fine. Contemplated for this site is to continue what this commission wanted, which was no deliveries on Commerce Drive, but there is sufficient circulation and space for deliveries on the site. So that is the condition that is requested going forward. Let's clear up this ambiguity in the
Condition of
record.
approval for on-site deliveries.
On-site deliveries only, no deliveries on Commerce Drive.
Which,
Meaning truck deliveries.
truck deliveries for vehicles.
Deliveries of cars or
Yes.
Correct.
supplies or
Cars.
parts and things like that?
Parts, that's usually a smaller vehicle. I think that's usually like an Amazon van. We're talking about the, yeah,
Car
right there.
car carrier trailers.
And specifically, we're also providing the one required loading space, which is honestly in a perfect location, because what's really going to happen is if you look at historical aerials, the previous use used to just park everything right here and then just let everybody take the car and go. It's essentially probably going to operate the same way, but there's a large amount of space there.
Those big tractor trailers are gonna be able to circumnavigate that.
Yeah, as well as the fire truck. There's a fire truck movement that's also in, I believe, your packet because it was submitted. That shows that we have proper circulation coming in and out of the horseshoe. So back to the impervious surfaces. So under existing conditions, there was 98% impervious surface. Under proposed conditions, we're reducing obviously by the wonderful green that we're going down to 89%. That's 9% reduction in the overall impervious in the site, as well as just from a water quality standpoint, we are providing the floodplain compensation basin, which is going to do kind of double duty, as well as under existing conditions where the proposed building was, it was parking. There was parking there, so you're getting oils, you're getting all sorts of grit and all that. Putting a building on top of that, you're now introducing just straight roof water, which is clean. You're not getting all those particulates that's going to go through there. So we're improving water quality just by the process of putting a building addition. Amazing, I love it. If you could do me a favor and go to the next sheet. Oh, actually, nope, I forgot about the dumpster. Nope, that one, same one, color one. Yep. Color one's beautiful. So as part of our site plan, we're also providing a dumpster enclosure. The dumpster enclosure is going to be essentially 3 sides of a cast in place concrete with a CMU block. That way it's kind of isolated. It's in the back of house. The only people that are going to see it are probably train commuters. Actually, they probably won't even see it because there's a large row of trees that are just going. So I'm not really that concerned about it.
So those trees are staying, it's hard to
Oh,
tell.
yeah. No, yeah,
They're adding trees to the right to make it circular instead of square, but the little fringe along the train tracks is remaining.
yes, correct. As well as there's as you saw in that earlier photo, along this edge, it's not really shown that well on this.
Thin fringe of trees.
Yeah, along the
That's
entire
vestibular,
property.
isn't it? The new
Yeah, I believe
vestibule?
so. Yeah, but this was the little moped things, right? Yeah, I think so. Now if you can go to the one just below. Now I get to talk about wonderful utilities, my heart and soul. So as you can see, so this is a grading utilities plan. Essentially what we're doing is, because of the cuts and fills dedicated to putting the building addition on, we're going to be providing the basin that's located on the east. So we have to cut, so we will be taking out a portion of the existing parking. I think it's digging about 3.5 feet, providing a dewatering under drain underneath, 1 to provide water quality, 2 to provide floodplain compensation, because the fill required to bring this building in at 15.9 to match the finished floor of the T-shape.
A basin, do you mean a detention basin?
Yes, correct.
That's underneath the green space you're putting there, like?
It is the green space. It's a beautiful thing.
It's like a rain garden, where does the water go?
So all the water's going to be directed essentially to here, and then
And where does
collected.
it go after that?
So it overflows into this, what's considered a CGCB. So it's not exactly what's considered an outlet control structure.
Catch basin?
Essentially. So that'll over top go into there. And then there's actually a pipe that leads to Commerce Drive. There's an existing oil water separator right there. That essentially cleans the water as part of our kind of duty. It's large enough, but it just needs to be cleaned. I don't think it's been cleaned in a while. But we're going to be having that cleaned, as well as we're going to be providing oil siphon hoods on every catch basin. I know that back in the day, Laura probably would make sure I did that. But oil siphon hoods on every catch basin, as well as providing deep sumps on every catch basin to catch those little particulates.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's cool. I'm trying to think of what's next. The existing utilities, from a utility standpoint, we're going to be reutilizing the existing water and sanitary services that are going to the building. So there's now no kind of fun stuff going on Commerce Drive. Everything's kind of isolated onto the site. We're providing ADA access into the building. I think if you can scroll down again, my best friend. I guess we'll get to it after. Sediment erosion, we're going to be providing a robust sediment erosion control plan. Luckily for us, we're once again bounded by that horseshoe retaining wall, so it's probably going to protect us more than anything else from any sort of sediment erosion control issues on the site, because the site itself drains from Commerce Drive onto us. So we should be able to maintain all that during construction. Now, if you can go to the next one, I think it's the finish. Nope, it's the fire truck plan. So as I mentioned before, this is the fire truck plan that was provided that shows the proper circulation through the building or through the parking lot. And the next one is pedestrian access. So there's a sidewalk, and you guys might have talked about it in another hearing, but there's a sidewalk along our property. Nice crosswalk. But we're providing both ADA access and access to pedestrians if they were going to be walking around and, you know, they see a nice Challenger that they're like, I could be driving that. I wanted one more thing and I can't remember what it was. Fitting in the floodplain, you're going to do the. Oh, I know what it is. Also, all the trees that we're providing are native species. We're replacing the, I hate to do this to you again. Yeah, the colored cycle, beautiful. So we're replacing the existing street trees along Commerce Drive, as well as we're kind of beautifying what would be the compensation basin with a couple trees and a couple shrubs, all native species, and hopefully they thrive in that area. That's actually new soil, so it should be good.
Commissioner Braun?
Can you explain what a compensation basin is again?
So, let's see.
What's it compensating for?
So
'Cause
the
you're
build-
adding less
so-
impervious surface, you're
So,
reducing. Yeah.
two different things going on. So we're playing with the impervious surface. The compensation is actually playing with the grades. So in order for us to maintain that the existing building finished floor, so the first floor of the building is continued in the building addition, we actually have to fill in that area in order to make all that work. Well,
Where the new
because we're
building,
in
you have to raise it, you're saying?
correct.
Okay.
Raise the grade to make sure everything works.
Right.
Typically, you want to make sure that everything's, 5% or below for parking. Well, we're in a floodplain. So in order for us to do that, we have to actually compensate that fill with cut. So I'm cutting this area and I'm taking advantage of, providing water quality there. I think it's good practice.
And you're adding a wider fringe of trees to the street side.
Yes,
I know,
the
because in
frontage,
aerial, there's
correct.
not much there.
No, at one point, I think it was completely paved.
Actually, if I could jump in there for a second, this is Megan Miles, and I apologize if I'm interrupting your chain of questions. But the front area there, as it was mentioned, it's completely paved. My understanding is it's been used for outdoor display for a number of years. It wasn't supposed to be paved, it was. And so in connection with this application, if you're to do outdoor display in these design districts, you're supposed to have a 10-foot landscape buffer. So that's what we're doing here. So it's okay, it's already paved. Let's add the 10-foot landscape buffer and make it a really attractive outdoor display area that essentially improves existing conditions. And so now we have that compliant landscape buffer that we're able to put the shade trees there and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think I'm done with the site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if you could scroll down, my guy, if you, past the fire loop, past the pedestrian plan, one more after that, and I think we're on to the races.
Oh,
Oh,
the rendering should pop up.
yeah.
Yeah, there we go. All right, Dan Ray here with Jewett Construction. So we're handling both architecture, engineering, and construction management for this project for the Jangris Group. So we've been managing the architectural design as you see it here in this rendering. This is from Commerce Ave, kind of directly east of the crosswalk that you guys may be familiar with. You can see kind of the center block where you guys may recognize that 251 nameplate. That's essentially getting cleaned up, and then the flanks to either side are becoming two new tenant spaces for what's Jeep on the right and Chrysler, Dodge, Ram on the left. So two separate brands kind of functioning somewhat independently with that kind of administrative block in the middle. So this perspective rendering shows just an afternoon looking at the completed facility. We'll get into materials and the forthcoming slides, but you can generally see the aluminum composite metal paneling and EIFS and just new materials throughout. So on to the next slide here, sir. This is just a basic floor plan we wanted to share with you guys to just give you a little bit of an idea of what the facility's functioning like on the interior. Again, you can see kind of the two brand spaces. On the right-hand side is the Chrysler Dodge Ram facility, which is roughly half the size actually of the Jeep branded tenant space to the left, page left. In the core, you see the customer lounge in the middle, and then kind of page south are all of the parts and shop and support functions as it relates to that. Far left, you'll see the service drive where those column penetrations come down on the screen. Yep, thank you. So this is 3 to 4 vehicles, single lane, queuing for service repair orders. And from there, you come into a modern service advisor space and in and around through the showroom to the customer lounge. So what you can see here at the bottom left, this is the block that's being added. You saw it on Rock's presentation. That's about 18,000 square feet of total addition space. The rest of it's just all existing footprint that we are doing a deep clean and repair on.
And I just need to bring up one more thing before, just apologize, Rock Images for the record. With regard to the floodplain, this small portion that I noted as at 14.8, we are proposing that it be raised to 15.1. So just above the base flood elevation. Thank you.
That's about it on the floor plan. The next slide here is a roof plan, just primarily to give you guys context on how the lines are working and just to demonstrate at the Commerce Drive facing facade where we have these parapets extending up. We have 5 new rooftop units going on the structure. All of these are deep enough back away from the street that you actually really don't see them from a vantage point, which we demonstrated in the rendering, just to make sure that we were thinking about it and proving it out there. It's really all there is for the roof plan. This exhibit here is giving you guys more detail on the flood compensation and flood proofing components that we're dealing with on this project. So without belaboring it too much, this is color coded with a legend and marked up to just show basically a couple of opposing details between storefront or curtain wall as the first detail and open overhead doors or man doors as the second detail. And both of these get removable flood panels or this water stopped curb detail to bring us to that flood proofed elevation that Rock alluded to. So a lot of provisions in place and just stipulations to handle the flood zone that we're in. And this is an architectural site plan that we wanted to share with you guys. It's very similar to the colored site plan, but this has more information on the dumpster enclosure that Rock mentioned at the back of the site. Up here with the metal grating and block, it's a relatively decorative dumpster enclosure. That's at this back left-hand corner of the site where, again, the trains come through. Also at the top left, right off of Commerce, we have a new pylon sign. It's about 10 foot tall by 8 foot wide, and that's taking place of an existing ground mount sign that's there now. It's within the total maximum allowable square footage, and we've just calculated some of the other criteria related to that as far as max height for labels and verbiage and that type of stuff. So outside of that, this indicates the number of vehicle charging stations. We have one level 3 kind of at the top peak of the site that you're looking at on this page. And then we have a total of 6 other level 2 chargers between this bank here and one in the shop. So just modernizing the facility for the EV we see coming our way. So that's about it for that sheet. This is a photometric that would be a little bit hard to see in presentation, but in general terms, we are maintaining all the existing site poles. They're about 20 foot tall poles on 3 foot bases, and we're just repurposing them with modern fixtures. So new heads on all of these lights and new wall packs, of course, on the building surfaces themselves. These will all be fully hooded cutoff fixtures, dark sky compliant. Photometrics have been run. We have minimal to no light spillage outside of the lot boundaries. I think the average foot candle we have in here is it's about 3 foot candles. Some of the areas that Rock outlined as far as customer parking, display, that type of thing, we have varying anywhere from 29-foot candles at some of the perimeter parking for primarily security reasons to as low as 6 feet, 6-foot candles at some of the internal parking spaces, about 15-foot candles average at the pre-owned inventory. So we ran this to just make sure lighting levels were good for our client as far as security and functionality, and demonstrate the compliance with the town's requirements as needed.
I jump in there for a second, Dan. So to interrupt again, this is Megan. This is a situation, again, where in the design district, we're asking you to approve a light pole over 12 feet. It's section 13P. Clearly, this is something that comes up here on Commerce Drive, but as mentioned, there's existing light infrastructure and poles on the site. And so we're maintaining the poles, but improving the fixtures on top of the poles, which are old. So that's the lighting situation here.
That's about it as far as the lighting goes. The next page, these are exterior elevations that have been colored and coated with just materials and general intent as far as the aesthetic goes. So we have a combination of the ACM paneling, again, similar to what you're used to seeing on the recently completed stores down the street on Commerce, and a little bit of a blend of insulated metal panel at back of house and an EFIS product that exists on parts of the building that we'll be repairing, recoating, repainting, and then matching with new construction where it makes sense. The Harvest bamboo that you guys see is the accent ACM. It's primarily part of the Jeep brand over the entrance canopy and at kind of the chamfered returns at the Jeep side of the curtain wall systems. Outside of that, there's basically a lot of grays and varying delineations and some kind of like chrome features at the canopy on the Jeep side, and then the arched band at the Chrysler Millennium Arch on the left. Anodized storefront systems everywhere, clear anodized, I should say. And that's generally it for materials and aesthetics, fairly straightforward commercial automotive staples. The plan in front of you here is a signage study to show how we're handling the two brands and compliance with the signage regulations. So as we mentioned, we have the Jeep brand on the right. This has basically the one Jeep sign at 24.31 square feet total. To the right of it is a wayfinding service sign to direct you into the service drive itself, so more directional than branding signage. On the left, we have the Chrysler Dodge Ram signs, which are in 2 blocks. So we have the one that is being circled now, and then the Jangris over the arch itself. Both of those are also just under the max allowable per square.
So these aren't just, the signs aren't just put in there as placeholders. This is what you expect to be there. You
Correct.
They've gone through, comply with regs. Yeah, I see a yes from Mr. Wentz. Okay, thank you.
We're trying to skip the coming back for
This is
sign.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we've gone through a lot of coordination with the manufacturers. Some of, they're always asking for more, of course, but we've kind of settled into, we hope, an area of compliance with both the zoning and the manufacturers. What you see down here at the bottom of the page is essentially a transparency study. So from 2 feet to 10 feet above finished floor, there's basically that horizontal band that we're studying as far as fenestrations versus opaque assemblies to be 60% or greater. We're just a tad over 60% with the glazing that we've deployed here. So that's really just intended to show compliance with that requirement of 13.13, and that's about it for that sheet. These are just a few more axonometric views of the facility, kind of monochrome without the higher def renderings to give you guys a better idea of the massing that's going into this facility. So 1, 2, and 3 go down the page. 1 is the straight on, 2 is kind of the east side of Commerce, 3 at the bottom is the west side of Commerce. and just giving you guys a little better idea. This is again modeled with those rooftop units in mind, and you can see that the parapets create almost like a depression in the roof behind them to protect visibility from commerce. And I believe about it as far as the building and the architecture goes.
Commissioner Braun?
I didn't see any trees on the rendering from Commerce Drive, but there are trees there.
There are, we removed some of them to just accentuate
There will be
the building's
Is
architecture.
is the width of the green space wider than what it is now? I don't know what it looks like now.
Yes.
And it looks like so that's a display area for new cars?
Correct.
Okay. And then on the other side is the handicap?
Good.
Would it help if we go to the existing conditions?
Yeah, that one actually might.
Yeah, if you go,
Is it up one page?
up
think
one
it's
or
one
two, I think it might be up two, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
So if you, yeah, actually keep going up,
yeah, it might be a bit easier on the regular aerial. This one?
yeah.
No,
That's what it looks like now, right?
That's what it looks like now,
So you can see
exactly.
it's taped
So
right
where's
up
the
to
green
wall.
space? It's gonna fill in some of that
Yeah, it's
asphalt?
basically gonna fill in most of this asphalt. So.
Maintaining the
especially-
wall.
Especially here,
Yeah.
there's gonna be green space essentially from the wall to the sidewalk.
And that's real green space. That's not just planters. That's like
Yeah, that's
actual,
actual wall.
so that's actually part of
Not the
your
asphalt.
drainage situation, your reduction of
I'm-
impervious surface?
Correct, correct.
And do you have the shade trees, 1 per 10 space, not for the inventory side, but for the other side?
So interestingly enough, the majority, actually, if you can go up, this kind of band of trees,
Mhm.
I essentially think it's almost 35 trees, which is mostly on our property. So it already technically falls in our.
So you're not planting more trees in the.
No, along the edge, no.
I did see a couple of islands though, sort of
Correct.
sticking out from the building.
Yeah, so that's around the service drive. One of the reasons.
Will those have trees in them or
There's none planned currently.
Contemplated.
would it be possible to put a tree there for shade? It sure would be nice.
Yeah, we do. I don't see an issue.
We try to
for this.
avoid it honestly, just for maintenance reasons. If
The roots.
we're at the
Is
threshold.
there a type of tree that wouldn't have like roots or things dropping? Like,
So there are typical street trees that we could provide at either end of this, kind of those islands. That have kind of, so when they grow out, they kind of grow in like a cluster up. And they have, they don't really drop many things. I think.
arborvitaes or something like that, or?
Arborvitae, you kind of want for screening. I'm thinking more like a red maple, so that way you're not like, you don't have any droppings.
Yeah.
Also, just to stress, trees are also contemplated in the green space added to the rear of the site, so that's also gonna be, that's where we were actually essentially.
Just, yeah, I don't know what you probably know what our regulation says more than I, does our regulate, I'm asking Mr. Nguyen, what does our regulation say about trees per parking spot? Are they supposed to be in the parking spaces or just anywhere on the whole property?
Well, it's within the parking field, but it's your discretion as to where they are. We've got lots of examples of perimeter and then with supplemented with island plantings within the parking lot.
Okay. And then one other question about the drainage. The engineering department had requested more information, and then I see a memorandum here on May 23rd. Does that answer her questions?
So we provided, I think even.
A drainage
I
memorandum?
already sent an email to Jim
Yeah.
that says that she
Okay.
was, I had a
I
conversation.
saw an email from her saying it answered her questions, but,
Correct.
so it's it reduces,
Yeah, so we reduce peak flows for the 2 through the 100 year as well as provide water quality. So incidentally, by reducing the amount of impervious, you're reducing the peak flows. So it's kind of fortuitous.
okay, thank you.
Any further questions, other questions from the commission?
Jeff?
Commissioner Randolph, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to pivot off of Commissioner Braun's questions. So in your LA plan, and I've only got the download, I don't have your color version. You've got 9 trees specified.
Correct.
There, you've got 175 spaces that would round up to 18 trees. So where are the remainder of the trees? You don't have them indicated in your landscape plan along that western edge?
Just to interrupt for 1 second too, I believe the requirement is calculated based on required spaces, not actual spaces provided. Jim may correct me if I'm wrong. So the site is required to have 60
Yeah, 63 parking spaces.
parking
Yeah,
spaces.
to meet the
So,
zoning requirement. The remainder,
yeah.
100 and if I can do math, 112 parking spaces are all for inventory.
Are surplus parking essentially for the use. So my understanding is that 6 trees or 7, if we round up, 7 trees are what's
Mr.
required.
Lane, is that correct?
Well, that's ultimately your call as the commission. We have typically, I would say my response would be kind of a hybrid of the response that you heard. I don't know that I would agree that it would based on the number of required spaces versus what's being proposed. But with respect to car dealerships, we tend to segregate car inventory spaces from other parking spaces. So it's kind of in between. But to the extent that there could be islands with trees, even within the inventory space, I understand the concerns, for maneuvering, and a lot of those cars get stacked. They don't stripe the parking lot and they double, triple stack the spaces. But, to the extent where trees can be provided, we would certainly recommend they be provided.
Right. So I'm hearing that we want to be reasonable, and but this area is particularly desolate, and there's an absence of greenery in this part of town because of its historic use as an industrial area. And I'm, the way that our commission has been leaning, it has been to encourage the operations of a facility, but also the enhancement of the landscape. So I would respectfully request that the ratio of trees, because right now you've got 9, and I didn't see the dimensions. I think maybe it was on this plan.
Oh, you had trees on the side.
Yeah, so if
It's
you.
not- I mean, it's showing 9
it's not-
there,
So if you could go
No, no.
to
Yeah.
the aerial image again.
Yeah, there's one drawing that showed 9.
So the LA plan is the
I'm
land,
sorry,
they're
there's
just
one-
not identified.
Oh, yeah, but the one we just saw showed 9, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm
So-
sorry. So if you're going to count those trees that are next to the scooter dealership that we just approved, those need to be identified and not just credited as existing, I'll say accidental trees, but as intentional landscape trees. So I understand that you don't want to impede the operations, but we do need you to comply with the ratio of 10 trees per space. So that's one. And I didn't see a
I'm
dimension. I'm sorry. Go
trying
ahead.
to follow Commissioner Randolph. I'm not sure I follow what you're asking of them.
I think
So-
he's asking for us to essentially identify the trees along our property line and provide that to the tree warden.
If you're getting credit for those trees in the western parcel, inventory them. And then make sure they're actual trees and not just scouts of some, tree of heaven that was deposited there by birds. So I would request that you comply with our tree ratio. I didn't see dimensions. I didn't see a caliper on your LA plan, the version that was sent to me, which is different than the color version that you were showing. Do you have a caliper dimension on your trees?
They're on the plant schedule on the top right, which shows that they're going to be for the river birches,
Can you go to that page?
LA.
Yeah, the LA sheet that I had didn't have those. It didn't have the dimensions. So I just want to make sure that those are.
Apologies. So the river birch is going to be 8 feet tall or 8 or 10 feet in height when it's planted, or the Sweet Bay magnolias are going to be 3-inch caliber.
Okay.
So pretty mature trees when you're installing them.
Say again.
They're actually more mature trees than what you're typically used to. Because usually if you're going to be going to a nursery, It's usually about 1.5 to 2 inches. 3 inches is pretty.
I think 3.5 is our minimum dimension, I believe. But so they do sound like they're substantial trees. Thanks for pointing that out. So the other thing is lighting. I don't think on your spec sheet you confirmed that the MRM fixture on A05 was a full cutoff. It looks like it is, but if you could just make sure that that's in the spec, that would be helpful.
They're going to be LED lights, full cutoff, and dark sky compliant.
Okay. Yeah, you did mention that, and let's just make sure that that gets in the spec. So that was just adding to what Commissioner Braun had discussed. If you go to A08 and A06, your elevations. You know, I realize that Jeep and Chrysler are different demographic than many of the other car dealerships in this row: Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, Range Rover, Infiniti, and Hyundai. But and I know you've got an existing building, and it certainly is an improvement, but the elevation, the use of materials is quite haphazard and eclectic. And I know, you know, you're customer facing and you know your customers, but it's just it's going to stand out perhaps for the wrong reasons amongst the other car dealerships there: Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, Range Rover, and Infiniti, and the Hyundai dealer across the street. So I'm just letting you know that I don't know how much time you spent on that street. It is improving, but and you will be improving a derelict building, but the building you're proposing doesn't really match up to the other buildings on the street. And that's just feedback with, I'm not suggesting any conditions related to that. So that's all.
We appreciate that.
Commissioner Pikowski.
Just to clarify, I didn't hear you say that you're removing any trees. You're only adding green space and trees, right?
So there are a couple trees along the front that one is kind of dilapidated. So we're just replacing them.
Replacing, but no, right. So like anything that's
It will be taken out and then new trees will be put in. I think there's 3 that are along the frontage, maybe 4.
That's fine. Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, I was just curious how the flood panels work with the overhead doors.
So there's basically hinges that are fixed on the jambs, and these come in, they slide in panel by panel, and have a gasketed connection. So you come in and you install them, they'd be stored on site, and it's all approved and engineered for this type of application. So it's
storms coming, you put them in.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of interesting. Yeah. And then, yeah, all the curtain walls and everything are fixed above that curb that's flashed in with a membrane underneath it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Pikowski.
I just wanted to respectfully disagree with Commissioner Randolph's opinion on the aesthetics of the building. I actually do like it quite a bit, and I think it's going to add, it will add a nice feel to an area that's developing. So
appreciate that.
I appreciate that. That's great.
Any further questions? Please
I
finish.
just had a couple of concluding thoughts for purposes of the record before we wrap up. First, I want to briefly address the coastal site plan review component of this application. This is an existing developed site removed from coastal resources, but I note that there are no adverse impacts anticipated to coastal resources, and rather very likely some benefits through, as mentioned, the flood resiliency improvements on site, the stormwater management upgrades on the site, the reduced impervious surface, and the additional landscaping. And so for that reason, we submit this in our papers, but this project is consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Management Act. I also note that in addition to the quality site enhancements that we've presented tonight, this project did receive a letter of support from the Economic Development Commission. The Jangris group presented to them last month. They noted they believe that there is compatibility with surrounding uses, and Jangris's anticipated significant investment in the site will yield tax revenues and new employment. And in our narrative, we did note that we anticipate up to 55 new employees on the site in connection with this project. And then last, to conclude with some just thoughts here, this site has been a dealership and repair center for 25 years with, my understanding is, no adverse impacts on adjacent uses in a commercial corridor that's notable for a high concentration of similar uses. The applicant is a well-established, reputable owner and operator seeking to grow and invest further in Fairfield. They're proposing an expanded building of quality design with valuable site and sustainability upgrades. And we put together a full statement of findings in our package that went through like every single special permit requirement. But as noted in there, we believe this project is in harmony with your POCD and meets the special permit, special exception standards outlined in your zoning regulations. So thank you.
Commissioner Braun.
Is your coastal site review in your narrative here?
Yes, yes. I believe I put it at the end of the project narrative instead of a separate sheet, just because the site is removed from coastal resources. This isn't a lot of the site or anything like that. Usually we do something a lot more detailed, but
Final questions from the commission?
I'm fine, thank you.
You
Go
wanted-
ahead, yeah, sorry.
As a condition, you wanted us to waive or as far as the delivery, that would be on site.
just make it the conditions clear that going forward that deliveries are on site and not on Commerce Drive. And then historically, you used to have to get your location approval from the ZBA. The law changed and now it comes from the zoning enforcement officer. So I'll speak with him about also having that clear going forward for purposes of his permit. It was just confusing looking back at the permitting history for the site.
I can shed some light on. Jim went for the record. The history on historically, as you may know, the SCAP ownership group had multiple dealerships on Tunxus Hill Road that were their sites. They acquired this site in the night, whatever the date was, I don't recall, sorry, that where it was approved was going to be their used car facility. So at the time of that discussion, since they had other sites where cars were being delivered, they offered that they wouldn't have any car deliveries here because they had other facilities. That's why that condition was imposed. So in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary to revisit whether or not you can have deliveries here. I think it makes sense for there to be deliveries here as long as those deliveries take place on the property and not in the street. So that's why there was that quirky condition. It was unique to SCAP because they had other facilities where the cars were actually being delivered and then they would drive them to this location.
We don't need to do anything aside from the condition of approval that delivers be on site. You're not asking us to undo anything that was previously done. I would think that condition of approval is pretty clear as to.
Exactly. It'd be going forward. This is it.
So between that condition of approval, then the light fixtures poles over 12 feet was the only other.
Correct. And then just so everything's clear, there's an old condition of approval that does not permit outdoor display in front of the building. We're asking for a new special permit approval to permit that going forward.
Okay, but that's part of the.
But that's a separate new approval. It wouldn't be a.
Is that part of what we're doing here?
As part of tonight, yes.
All right.
So cleaning up some things.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're all set for the initial presentation. I don't know where this is going, but is there any member that will close the initial presentation, open to public comment? Any member of the public that's joining us in person? I don't see anybody, correct? No. Any member of the public joining us remotely or by phone wish to be heard on this application? Mr. Decker, anybody chat or raising their hands or anything like that? No, okay. Last call, any member of the public joining us remotely or by phone or in person that wish to be heard on this application? Hearing nobody, I'll close the public comment portion of the application. Anything further?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'll close the hearing on this application, and that being the last item during the hearing. So let's adjourn the meeting.
With a bamboo as well.
Thank you,
Recording
everyone.
stopped.
Thank you so much.